Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Atha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishkam Vitam Scha Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyanachana Shalakya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah Gorva Bhistam Supurakam Gurganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipunam Shri Rupa Patanagam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Vande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bijap Pranam Devam Divyatanum Suchanda Varanam Balaka Chelan Shitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Banditam Shivadam Madeka Sharanam Nyashishwara Shridharam Vanshikopatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavenibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahamananyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishay Namah. So I'm reading from Sri Chaitanya Bhagawat by Srila Vrindaban Das Thakur. And this is with translation by Bengali devotee Sarva Bhavana Prabhu, or Sarva Bhavana Das. So this is chapter 13, Adi-khanda. Sri Nimai defeats the Digvijay. All glories to Lord Gaurachandra, the brightest lamp of the Brahmin race. All glories to the Lord who inspires the deepest feelings of ecstasy in the hearts of all his devotees. So here it says Brahmin race. Okay. I would say all glories to Lord Gaurachandra, the brightest lamp of the Brahmanas. All glories to the Lord who inspires the deepest feelings of ecstasy in the hearts of all his devotees. All glories to the Lord and Master of Govinda, the doorkeeper. Please shower your merciful glance on the conditioned living entities. All glories to the Emperor of the Brahmins and the crest jewel amongst all teachers. All glories to the society of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees. The Lord of Vaikuntha Nimai was immersed in the mellow of an audacious, proud scholar. In those days, Navadip town itself was an institution, housing many scholars and teachers well versed in all branches of the scriptures. Titles like Bhattacharya, Chakravarti, Mishra, and Acharya were common, and the only work of these scholars was teaching. Their sport was debate, and in their intolerant and impatient ways, they did whatsoever was required to win an argument. Even if a well-respected superior scholar made valuable points, others would disagree with him. Lord Nimai's habit was to constantly rebuke the other scholars and refute their arguments right in front of them. There was no teacher in Navadip who could confront the Lord's arguments and offer a second opinion. As soon as they saw the Lord, such fear gripped their hearts that they immediately became obsequious. Whosoever conversed with the Lord, even by chance, became his dedicated follower. Everyone knew of the Lord's erudition and intellect from his early childhood. Within their hearts, they also knew that Lord Nimai could never be defeated by anyone. The mere sight of the Lord created a feeling of awe and respect amongst the scholars, so they naturally became submissive in his presence. Yet his illusory energy prevented anyone from knowing him in truth. Only when the Lord reveals himself of his own volition can one understand his real identity. Although the Supreme Lord is most munificent in every respect, it is entirely by his personal desire that one is able to perceive his confidential transcendental pastimes. In Navadip, Lord Gaurachandra performed his transcendental pastimes in the mood of a scholar, deluding everyone about his esoteric identity. Once a very learned but supercilious scholar holding the title Digvijay, meaning one who has conquered scholars in all directions, came to Navadip. He was a dedicated devotee of the goddess of learning, Saraswati, and he had received her blessing by chanting her propitiatory mantra. By chanting her mantra, he had become successful as a Digvijay Pandit. Mother Saraswati is actually the universal mother. She is non-different from Lakshmi Devi, the eternal consort of the Supreme Personality of God Sri Narayan. Lakshmi Devi is the embodiment of transcendental loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. She is the internal potency of the Lord and is always situated upon his chest. By his desire and good fortune, the Brahmin had received a benediction from Mother Saraswati to become a Digvijay scholar. For her to give such a boon was effortless, for she is capable of bestowing even the rarest gift of transcendental devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Sri Narayan. Having received this benediction directly from Goddess Saraswati, the Brahmin proceeded to travel throughout the land, conquering scholars wherever he went. All the scriptures were on the tip of his tongue. No one in the world could challenge him. Many could not even follow the introduction to his main dissertations, so he went unchecked and unchallenged everywhere. When Navadip's fame as a center for great scholars reached his ears, he went there with great pomp and ceremony, leading a procession of elephants, horses, and men. News spread like wildfire in every house of Navadip, creating waves of confusion. The word spread, after conquering the scholars of every land, the Digvijay has at last come to Navadip. The teachers of Navadip were further alarmed when they heard that he was a direct recipient of a boon from Goddess Saraswati. Worriedly, they spoke amongst themselves. Worriedly, they spoke amongst themselves. Navadip is the most famous center of learning in the entire world. If the Digvijay were to defeat our scholars, then Navadip's glory will be minimized and the world will hear of our failure. Yet no one has the courage to challenge him, for he is the recipient of Mother Saraswati's special benediction. It is said that Mother Saraswati herself appears upon his tongue whenever he speaks. How can a mere human being defeat him? The hundreds of Bhattacharya scholars residing in Navadip were distraught with anxiety and abandoned all activities. Navadip bustled with excitement as the time for the trial of intellectual strength drew near. His students described all this in detail to Sri Gauranga. After conquering all other parts of the world, a Digvijay Pandit has come to Navadip to challenge our scholars in debate. It is said that he has received the special favor of Goddess Saraswati. He has entered Navadip in a great procession of horses, elephants, palanquins, and men. He says that if there are no challengers amongst the Navadip scholars, he wants a letter of victory issued on his behalf. Lord Gaurachandra heard his students and then with a smile reminded them about the nature of the Absolute. Listen, brothers, and I will tell you the actual situation. The Supreme Lord does not tolerate anyone who indulges in continual insolence. Whenever he finds someone burdened by arrogance over some personal quality, he invariably removes the cause of his or her pride. A fruit-laden tree and a person endowed with good qualities will inevitably bend down in humility. You must have heard of other great conquerors like Haihaya, Nahusha, Vena, Bana, Naraka, Ravana, etc. Did the Supreme Lord neglect to prune their overbearing pride? He never tolerates such ignominious insolence. Here in Navadip, you will witness the end of this supercilious scholar. The Lord amused himself with his students in this way. In the evening, he went to the bank of the river Ganga, sprinkled some Ganga water upon his head, offered his obeisances, and then sat in the midst of his students. The Lord lectured on various subjects, such as religion and its different scriptural explanations. No one, however, understood that the Lord was simultaneously thinking of the manner in which he could defeat the Digvijay Pandit. This Brahmin has become extremely arrogant, and he thinks that there is no one in this world to defeat him, thought the Lord. If I humble him in front of everyone, it will be like a shameful death for him. People will dishonor him. He will lose everything, and eventually he will die from humiliation. Therefore, I must confront him secretly in a solitary place and yet ensure his downfall. In that way, I can eclipse his vanity without destroying him. While the Supreme Lord was thinking in this manner, the Digvijay arrived at the Ganga. As dusk faded into night, the river Ganga looked radiant beneath the full moon in the sun. While the Supreme Lord was thinking in this manner, the Digvijay arrived at the Ganga. As dusk faded into night, the river Ganga looked radiant beneath the full moon in the soft, clear sky. The Supreme Lord was effulgent in the midst of his students, and his exquisite beauty captivated the entire creation. A sweet smile decorated the glowing moon-like face of the Lord, and his two beautiful eyes showered transcendently merciful glances. Pearls are lackluster in comparison with his teeth, and his radiant lips are easily mistaken for the rising sun. With his soft and delicate body, he is a personification of compassion. His perfect head is covered with raven black curls. His graceful lion-like neck rested perfectly on his beautiful broad shoulders. He was dressed in divinely exquisite clothes. His perfectly proportioned body was large, and his heart was ruled by his munificent nature. The Brahman thread hanging loosely across his shoulders was the bow of Anantasesh. His long arms extended gracefully to his knees, and the Urdhva Pundra tilak decorating his The Brahman thread hanging loosely across his shoulders was the bow of Anantasesha. His long arms extended gracefully to his knees, and the Urdhva Pundra tilak decorating his wide forehead enraptured the hearts of everyone. With his dhoti tied elegantly at his waist, Sri Gauranga sat in the cross-legged posture of a yogi, establishing and refuting various arguments in his usual manner of discourse. Many students had gathered around Mahaprabhu that evening, and the Digvijay Pandit was astonished to see the wonderful assembly. Is this Nimai Pandit, he thought? Unseen by anyone, he stood spellbound by the Lord's extraordinary beauty. Who is this person? He inquired from one of the students. This is the famous Nimai Pandit, replied the student. After offering his obeisances to the Ganga, the Digvijay moved a little closer to the Lord. Upon noticing him, Nimai smiled at him and affectionately offered him a seat. Having already conquered all the scholars in the land, the Digvijay Pandit was naturally fearless. Yet in the presence of the Lord, he was filled with awe. By the design of the omnipotent Supreme Lord, whoever approaches him in a challenging mood will feel both awe and fear. The Lord exchanged introductory words with the Pandit and then asked him a few questions. You are an extremely versatile poet, said the Lord. There is no subject which you cannot perfectly describe. Therefore, please elucidate the wonderful glories of the holy Ganga so that whoever hears your glorification will be freed from sin. At that very instant, the Digvijay Pandit began to extemporally compose and recite unparalleled verses in praise of the holy river. Who can imagine the countless ways in which he described Mother Ganga? Verses swiftly passed his lips, and his voice resounded like a continuous roll of thunder. It certainly seemed that Mother Saraswati herself had appeared on the tip of his tongue. Whatever he uttered was apparently precisely appropriate. Was it humanly possible to find a mistake in his eloquent compositions? There seemed to be no one present who could even properly follow them. Nimai's hundreds of students who had assembled there stared at the Pandit with mouths agape. "O Lord Rama," they said, "how wonderful. Is it possible for a human to compose such eloquent poetry?" His composition was profusely ornamented with the most exceptional figures of speech applied most appropriately. His word usage perplexed even the scholars who were present. For 3 hours, the Digvijay continually composed and recited his unparalleled verses. There seemed to be no end to his brilliant oration. When at last he finished, the Lord smiled sweetly and said, "Your poetry was so exceptional that no one can understand the meaning unless you yourself explain it. The verses you have composed are certainly appropriate for glorification of the Ganga, but we entreat you to analyze them for us." The Lord's sweet words affected him like an intoxicating beverage, and he began to explain the verses. However, as soon as he started to speak, the Lord interrupted him to point out 3 mistakes, one in the beginning, one in the middle, and one towards the end of his composition. The Lord said, "According to grammar, the figures of speech you have used show numerous imperfections. Please tell us in what context you have used them." The Digvijay Pandit, foremost of the favorite sons of Mother Saraswati, lost his intelligence. He tried but failed to offer proper explanations for the mistakes that Nimai had pointed out. His feeble and confused attempts to defend his composition brought further criticism from the Lord, who then elucidated the flaws in the explanations as well as the verses. The Pandit's unparalleled talent seemed to have vanished, and the situation grew incomprehensible to him. The Pandit's unparalleled talent seemed to have vanished, and the situation grew incomprehensible to him. He seemed to have forgotten even his own identity. Lord Nimai then said, "Leave this poem aside for now and compose another one." Nevertheless, alas, the great world-conquering Pandit was now unable to compose even a single verse. He sat before the Lord in a state of total bewilderment. Of course, even the Vedas personified have become perplexed in the presence of the Lord. Powerful personalities like Ananta Sesha, Lord Brahma, and Lord Shiva, who can each create universes by their mere glance, have also been deluded by the Lord's presence. The bewilderment of the Digvijay Pandit in front of Nimai is not surprising, because even Mother Lakshmi, Mother Saraswati, and Maya, the internal potencies of the Lord, which can delude the entire creation, become forever in an inferior position. Let's see. The bewilderment of the Digvijay Pandit in front of Nimai is not surprising, because even Mother Lakshmi, Mother Saraswati, and Maya, the internal potencies of the Lord, which can delude the entire creation, become themselves deluded before the Supreme Lord, and thus remain forever in an inferior position. The reciter of the Vedas, Lord Seish, and the compiler of the Vedas, Sri Vyasadeva, are even bewildered in the presence of the Lord. What to speak of a mere Digvijay Pandit? The accomplishments of the Lord are impossible for any human to match. Therefore, I say, all of his activities are extraordinary. Moreover, whatever the Supreme Lord does is always for the ultimate benefit of the suffering living entities, to release them from material bondage. While the Digvijay Pandit was struggling to swallow his ignominious defeat, the students began to laugh and giggle excitedly. The Lord immediately stopped them and spoke soft, soothing words to the Pandit. Today, let us stop here. Please return to your home, and tomorrow we can continue our discussion. You must be tired after composing such a lengthy recitation. Also, it is very late now. Soon it will be time to sleep. The Lord's behavior was so gentle and compassionate that even a defeated person did not suffer in humiliation. Although the Lord was always victorious in his debates, nevertheless, he always spoke words of concern for the scholars and teachers of Navadip. Again to the Digvijay Pandit, he said, please go home now and study your books. Tomorrow I will ask you questions and you must try to answer them. The Lord was so merciful that despite his victory, he did not dishonor the great scholar. Hence, everyone felt pleased. The scholars and teachers of Navadip were very affectionate towards the Lord because of this sweet disposition. The Lord and his students left the assembly to go home, but the Digvijay sat alone in utter shame and dejection. He thought to himself, Mother Saraswati has given me this boon. I have not come across anyone in the whole world who would dare confront me in a debate. Neither the expert scholars in the 6 philosophical branches of Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Shankya, Patanjali, Mimamsa, or Vedanta, nor the scholars of Shastra would dare contest my authority. Neither the expert scholars in the 6 philosophical branches, nor the scholars of Shastra would dare contest my authority. How is it that the Lord has allowed this insignificant teacher of grammar to children to defeat me in this manner? Seeing the power of Mother Saraswati undermined in this way causes me equal consternation. How have I offended the goddess that all my talent and knowledge were disparaged in this humiliating defeat? I think I must try to determine the cause of this situation. Thinking thus, he checked his mantra for some time and there lay down to sleep at his place. In his dream, Mother Saraswati looked compassionately upon the Brahmin and spoke confidentially to him. O learned Brahmin, listen to me. I will now reveal to you that knowledge which is undisclosed even in the Vedas. If for any reason you reveal this knowledge to anyone, you will immediately forfeit your body. The person who defeated you today is actually the Supreme Lord of the entire cosmic manifestation. I am an eternal servant at his lotus feet, and out of shyness I hesitate to stand before him. This is Mother Saraswati speaking to the Digvijay Pandit. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned, being ashamed of her position, the illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, but those who are bewildered by her continually talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of it is I and it is mine. In the Lord's presence, it was impossible for me to appear upon the tip of your tongue as I have in the past. I lost my potency, but that is not my fault. How could it be otherwise? This is Mother Saraswati speaking. Even Lord Anantasesh, who recites the Vedas with his thousands of mouths, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all the other demigods worship him and are totally bewildered in his presence. What to speak of me? He is the supreme absolute truth, eternal, pure, indivisible, and infallible. He is the omnipotent Supreme Lord, residing in everyone's heart as the Supersoul. The person who appeared before you as a young Brahmin boy is none other than the Supreme Personality of God, the ultimate cause of destruction of the entire cosmic manifestation. He is the cause of the dualities, fruit of action, knowledge, learning, good and bad, manifest and unmanifest, everything. It is by his desire that all living entities from Lord Brahma downwards experience happiness and distress. He is the supreme source of all incarnations like Matsya, Kurma, and others. It is he who appeared as Lord Varaha to lift the world, and again as Nrsingadev to protect his devotee Prahlad. He appeared again as Lord Vamana to trick Bali Maharaj, and thus his lotus feet became the source of Mother Ganga. He appeared in Ayodhya as Lord Ramachandra. So I'll read that paragraph again. It is by his desire, by the Lord's desire, speaking of the Lord as Nimai, it is by his desire that all living entities from Lord Brahma downwards experience happiness and distress. He is the supreme source of all incarnations like Matsya, Kurma, and others. It is he who appeared as Lord Varaha to lift the world, and again as Nrsingadev to protect his devotee Prahlad. He appeared again as Lord Vamana to trick Bali Maharaj, and thus his lotus feet became the source of Mother Ganga. He appeared in Ayodhya as Lord Ramachandra and performed many wonderful pastimes, ultimately killing the demon Ravana. He who is known as the son of Sri Vasudeva and Sri Narad and he who is known as the son of Sri Vasudeva and Sri Narad Muni has now, I said it wrong. He appeared in Ayodhya as Lord Ramachandra and performed many wonderful pastimes, ultimately killing the demon Ravana. He who is known as the son of Sri Vasudeva and Sri Nanda Maharaj has now appeared as a young Brahmin boy immersed in the mellows of a scholar. Where in the Vedas is this incarnation of the Supreme Lord openly revealed? Who will perceive the truth if the Lord himself does not reveal his inner identity? To become the greatest of all the scholars of the world is not the real result of chanting the mantra. Is not the real result of chanting the mantra I gave you. You have now received a factual result. You were able to see in person the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of the entire cosmic creation. O Brahmana, go quickly to him and take the shelter of his lotus feet. Surrender yourself completely to him. Do not imagine my advice to be a dream or hallucination. The power behind the mantra you chant has brought me here and forced me to reveal the most esoteric knowledge of the Vedas. Mother Saraswati disappeared after consoling the Pandit. He awoke from his deep sleep feeling purified and fortunate. Early dawn had just touched the eastern sky when he left for the Lord's house. He threw himself at the feet of Nimai Pandit to offer his obeisances, and the Lord reciprocated by lifting him up and embracing him. Why, it is you, said the Lord. Why are you behaving in this manner? So that I may attract your kind grace, replied the Pandit. Yet you are the famous and erudite Digvijay scholar. Why do you approach me like this? Questioned the Lord. O Lord of the most learned Brahmins, please hear me. The highest perfection in all activities is achieved simply by worshiping you. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan. You have appeared as a Brahmin in this age of Kali, but no one else has the potency to perceive your real identity. Confusion entered my heart at the very moment you asked me questions, and I found myself silent. Now I have the personal realization that you are so magnanimous and free from all pride, and my realization is in accordance with the verdict of all Vedic scriptures. You defeated me three times, yet you kept my honor intact. Is such behavior possible for anyone other than the Supreme Lord? I am convinced that you are that Supreme Personality of Godhead. I have traveled far and wide, Goda, Trihut, Kashi, Gujarata, Vidyanagar, Anga Banga, Tailanga, others. Okay. I have traveled far and wide, Goda, Trihuta, Kashi, Gujarat, Vidyanagar, Anga, Banga, Tailanga, Odra, and many other places. In each place, the most qualified scholars were easily defeated by me. They could not even understand my discourses, let alone find fault with them. However, in your presence, all my education and intellect seem to flee. I know not where I now realize. I know not where. Okay. However, in your presence, all my education and intellect seem to flee. I know not where. I now realize that this was not an extraordinary feat for you, because you are the Lord and the Master of Mother Saraswati. Saraswati has personally revealed this to me. I was wallowing in material existence, but because of my immeasurably good fortune, I came to Navadip and met you face to face. I was captivated and deluded by the desire for material knowledge, and in self-deception, I roamed about neglecting real absolute knowledge. Destiny has favored me, and thus I have met you personally. O Lord, kindly purify me by your benevolent glance and destroy my nescience. You have a magnanimous nature, and you are inclined to favor others, so there is no one but you from whom I can seek shelter. O Lord, please instruct me so that I shall never again allow unholy desires to enter my heart. As a meek and insignificant man, the Digvijay Pandit spoke with repentance before the Lord. Sri Gaurasundar replied, O learned Brahman, you are very fortunate because Mother Saraswati resides upon the tip of your tongue. Nevertheless, conquering the world with mundane knowledge is not a suitable objective for one with true wisdom. Knowledge becomes valuable only when it augments the worship of the Knowledge becomes valuable only when it augments the worship of the Supreme Lord. Try to carefully understand. When death strikes and the soul is forced from the body, no one can take with him his material knowledge or opulence. Therefore, the learned and self-realized souls completely reject this transient phenomenal existence and engage with unalloyed faith in the Lord's devotional service. Therefore, the learned and self-realized souls completely reject this transient phenomenal existence and engage with unalloyed faith in the Lord's devotional service. Now, O Brahman, leave aside all extraneous engagements and utilize your time worshiping the lotus feet of Sri Krishna for the remainder of your life. Remember that the fruit of true knowledge is wasted when the heart and mind are unflinchingly attached. Remember that the fruit of true knowledge is tasted when the heart and mind are unflinchingly attached to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Of all activities, devotional service to the Supreme Lord Vishnu is the only manifestation of absolute truth. This is the advice I offer you. Lord Gaurasundar embraced the Pandit, and at once the shackles of material existence fell away from the Digvijay. The Lord said, O Brahman, curb your arrogance and insolence. Worship Krishna and be kind to all living entities. Be very careful that you do not reveal anything Mother Saraswati has told you. Revealing the confidential knowledge of the Vedas to unauthorized persons reduces the lifespan and deviates one from the spiritual path. Having received the Lord's instructions, the Digvijay Pandit begged permission to leave. He repeatedly offered his prostrated obeisances at the feet of the Lord and uttered prayers, feeling most fortunate and purified. By the Lord's mercy, the Brahman was immediately blessed with detachment from material affairs, perception of the absolute truth, and devotion to the Supreme Lord. Within moments, the Brahman's arrogance and vanity dissipated, and he grew as humble and meek as a blade of grass. He renounced everything, his elephants, horses, palanquins, money, and the undesirable associates he had previously kept. Lord Gaurasundar's mercy had such a miraculous effect that the Brahman Digvijay abandoned everything and traveled alone. The mercy of the Lord can make a king leave his palace and happily take up a beggar's bowl. The remarkable example of this is Srila Rupa Goswami, who was also known as Sri Dabir Kash. He left his kingly position as a minister to live in the forest of Vrindaban. A servant of Krishna can easily ignore the material wealth, position, and prestige that are desired by the common people. Any person who has not realized the value of devotional service to the Supreme Lord will naturally consider the position of a king most comfortable and enviable. For the devotee of Krishna, even the happiness derived from liberation is insignificant. Therefore, mere kingly comfort is of no consequence whatsoever. Reality and true happiness lie solely in the merciful glance of the Supreme Lord, and therefore the Vedas advise everyone to serve that most merciful Lord. Lord Gaurasundar's wonderful defeat of the Digvijay and the Pandit's subsequent conversion was soon known in all corners of Nadia. People were astounded by the news, and they commented, Nimai Pandit must be a truly great scholar, for even the Digvijay, the greatest of all Pandits, was humbled by him. Nimai has now made himself worthy of our praise, and his fame will definitely spread far and wide. Now, someone said, if this Brahmin boy studies logic, he can immediately claim the highest title, Bhattacharya. However, another suggested, let's jointly offer him the title of Bodhisimha right now. The Lord's illusory potency was so strong that in spite of witnessing his miracles, no one could perceive his esoteric identity. From that time on, the people of Nadia could only discuss Nimai's victory over the Digvijay. I offer my obeisances to the feet of all the residents of Navadip, for they were fortunate enough to see the Lord's transcendental activities. Whoever faithfully and attentively hears this pastime of the Lord defeating the Digvijay Pandit will always be victorious, and whosoever hears about his captivating pastimes as a scholar will immediately become his eternal servant. Whoever faithfully and attentively hears the pastimes of the Lord defeating the Digvijay Pandit will always be victorious. And whosoever hears about his captivating pastimes as a scholar will immediately become his eternal servant. Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda Prabhu are my life and soul. I, Vrindaban Das, an insignificant soul, humbly offer this song at their lotus feet. So, Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda Prabhu are my life and soul. I, Vrindaban Das, an insignificant soul, humbly offer this song at their lotus feet. So now, Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namah. Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namah. Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinatha Maranaman. Giridhari Gopinatha Maranaman. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra. Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunath. Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raghunath. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan. Jaoite Vignana Shavishta Puran. Jaoite Vignana Shavishta Puran. H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradas. H.I. Gosai Jarmui Taradas. Tasavar Pada Renu Bora Panchagras. Tasavar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras. Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas. Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas. Janame Janame More Abhilas. Janame Janame More Abhilas. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. H.I. Gosai Jabe Braje Koilabas. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narotamodas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narotamodas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narotamodas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Narottam Das. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Joki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Sunanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsiko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ram Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Kuladvip Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Sevashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Vrindaban Dham Ki Jai. Shishi Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.